Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Law and Crime. I'm Jesse Weber, and thanks for joining us here on the network where we cover the most interesting live trials and legal stories in the news today. Big day here on the network. We're going to be live in 2 different courtrooms. A lot to cover, a lot to dissect, so let's get started right now. Okay, sidebar gives us a good opportunity to break down what we've seen so far. Joining me is juvenile judge and trial attorney Judge Ashley Willcott. Judge, great to have you here. I'm glad you're here to break this down. Now, am I understanding this correctly? What the state is trying to do under cross-examination of this witness is saying, look, everything we heard yesterday about his troubled childhood, the abuse, the abandonment, this imaginary friend, it's really not as bad as the defense wants to say. It didn't have this kind of effect on him that the defense wants to say, and that he may even be making up symptoms of mental illness. Am I understanding this correctly?
Well, that's what I think too, Jesse. Good morning, first of all. So I think that they're trying to show that he is histrionic and that he's making everything sound worse than it is, and it wasn't as bad as he'd like to pretend or portray it. And again, remember in the death penalty statute in South Carolina, they have to show, the prosecution state has to show aggravating circumstances beyond a reasonable doubt. And certainly that's easier to do if they're successful in saying his childhood wasn't that bad, didn't cause him to have these mitigating factors.
And that wasn't the only kind of dramatic moment we saw in court from yesterday. As I mentioned earlier, Amber Kaiser, the mother of these children, the ex-wife of the defendant, spoke out, very emotional testimony, but surprisingly, she said she asked for mercy from the court and for the court to not kill him. Your thoughts on that?
Well, I was surprised because typically, let's be honest, we see that sometimes, but often the victims who are left behind are usually okay with the death penalty and think that they need to receive that sentence. So A, it's a little bit unusual. B, the way she phrased it, what a remarkable woman to say, I don't think that's what the children would want. She's a mother to these children that she's lost, and she appears to be looking out for them first. It's pretty remarkable.
She seemed so credible on the stand because she said there were times during the course of this trial, and even when she knew about this case and everything that was happening, that she wanted to fry him, that she wanted to kill him. She wanted to rip his face off, I think at one point she said. This is what a normal reaction would be. So how do you think a jury is going to think about it?
Well, I do think they're going to take it into account. I think that they, too, are going to think, wow, what a remarkable thing that she's willing to put what she thinks the children would have wanted first. However, I don't think it's going to be enough evidence, in my opinion, to convince the jury at this point, based on what we've heard so far, to not impose the death penalty.
Well, we'll have to see. Okay, so this gives us a good opportunity to break down some of this case. Judge, what do you make of this trial? It's a lot of different players. Happened on a Super Bowl Sunday 2 years ago. This was all occurred at the house party of Charles Verpagel, who he hosted this party. He actually pled guilty to federal drug and weapons charges. We're seeing a lot of different characters. What are you making of this trial so far?
I mean, first of all, think about this, Jesse, as you just pointed out. A Super Bowl party, there's in the descriptions of this, in this case, there's a lot going on. There's a lot of chaos. There are a lot of different people. And so what's interesting is the defense has chosen in this case to say, here's my defense. Guess what? I was framed. It wasn't me. It's going to be really interesting to see how that plays out.
Yeah, but they find the defendant after the shooting collapsed on the side of the road next to his car. And when they look at the car, they find all of this evidence of him being the shooter. Gloves, a black glove, a loaded magazine for a .40 caliber Glock handgun. Then a single strap for a .40 caliber bullet in his pants pockets. So they find these things that would evidence that he's the shooter. How is he going to explain this away?
I don't know how he's going to explain that away, and that's why I'm so fascinated by this case and can't wait to hear what the defense is going to present along the lines of the theory of, hey, I was framed, it wasn't me. I don't know what he's going to claim, so we'll have to stay tuned. All
right, let's go back live. Okay, Judge, now you see these multiple players here in this case. It seems a bit complicated because based upon what we learned in the defense from yesterday, the defense attorney was basically saying that if you want to look at a victim here, the client, the defendant, is the victim here, that he was the one who was shot. And if you look at the bullet that he was shot with, it was the same one that was used in connection with the other shootings. What do you make of that?
That's right. That's right. So don't forget, Jesse, that there are allegedly, or the defense's position is there were actually 3 people who came in to, quote unquote, talk to those who were at the party. One of the 3 was this defendant. And that's exactly their point, that they're saying ballistics is going to show that the bullet that was used to shoot this defendant is the same type of bullet and gun that was used to shoot the 3 who were killed. And so they're arguing, listen, that shows He could have done it himself. Instead, someone else was the shooter.
It's also a tricky case because the defense is casting blame on Sean Henry, one of the victims, saying that he was involved in this altercation, this problem surrounding guns and drugs, and that he was one of the reasons this happened. So it's going to be a tricky kind of situation for the defense. Okay, this can get a bit complicated, so we're going to break it down. According to what we know in this case, after this shooting, the state wants to say that Fasada sped away or was in a car, the Honda Accord that belonged to one of the victims, Sean Henry. At some point, he's either dropped off or maybe collapses out of this car, and what he's found next to is his BMW. In this BMW is what's being analyzed. They find a sock in the passenger door. There were bullets inside. There was a rifle case found. What we're just seeing right now is there's 6 rounds to a gun found in the sock. So I'm back here with Judge Ashley Willcott. It's a complicated case with a lot of players. Are we following? You think the jury's following everything what's going on? Because this case is about who fired which gun, who's to blame, who really shot who, how did this all occur? It gets a bit complicated.
It does. And let me tell you my judicial perspective, Jesse. When I'm on the bench and watching a trial, here's what helps the most, and that is when the attorneys use demonstrative evidence. And I would just wish in this case that there was some kind of chart or board that she was writing on, so that, for instance, you can draw just a square and say Honda, another one that says BMW. As you get the information from the witness, you can put just a little diagram, a dash that says, you know, what they've testified to was found in each car. And then as you get through testimony, you can add a little picture of a body next to a car. So the jury can visualize, because this is a very complex crime scene. You actually have more than one crime scene. You have a Honda, you have a BMW, you have a backyard, another body was dumped somewhere else. You've got to put all that together in a way the jury can visualize and understand exactly what happened.
And the thing that I'm getting from this case is these might not all be innocent players. They might have had weapons on them. Were they, in fact, the weapons that were used in this precise shooting? So, for example, if you look at the defendant and you say, well, on him he had these guns, he had these bullets. You look at his car, there was evidence of different weapons. But that's not necessarily tying him to the exact crime here, because again, he is somebody who's part of this inner circle that, according to his defense attorney, was going over to this man's house, Charles Verpagel's house, to discuss ending a feud that was happening over drugs and guns. So that's a complicated part of this case as well.
Yeah, it is. And then there was, you know, the Honda is allegedly surrounded by guns when they find the Honda that's been abandoned. One of the individuals that was shot and killed around the fire pit had a gun in his waistband. So that does complicate it. There is a lot of forensic evidence in this case. And the only way the state's going to be able to prove, in my opinion, beyond a reasonable doubt, is to explain every bit of forensic evidence and link it to prove this defendant was the shooter.
Okay, a lot more to analyze. Judge, I want you to stand by. We'll take a break. When we come back, we'll be live. I also want to let you know that we're keeping a careful eye on the Jones courtroom. We'll let you know when it goes back live there as well. Stay tuned.